I was too dumb to use it.
XSplit's a little more technical, but it can do some crazy stuff. Okay, so we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hopcast on this Thursday evening/afternoon for our special guest. I'm your host, Adam Steele, and with me, as always, is Mr. Liam Wright.
Hello.
And our special guest, Kyle. Kyle is from Revv Amps and Aristides and Two Notes Engineering. Anything else that you do, Kyle? Lots of things?
No, not at the moment. I was doing independent consulting for a long time, but I had to drop most of it when this work came on. I'm helping out a band whose album is launching tonight. 16-year-old kid from Australia that shreds, doing like a bedroom prog thing. They're called Myoora, Myoora. You check them out tonight. But no, besides that, I'm basically just locked down to those three.
I'll absolutely check that out. Australian prog. That's me. Hi, I'm one of those fans. Yeah, cool. So, on today's docket, there's been some interesting news, but first let's talk to our special guest. I don't know how long we've got with Kyle before he's got to go. Revv have moved. Revv Amplification started off with these big heavy metal amps, right? The generators. But now you do more. Now there's been the pedals and the D20. So let's talk about the move from amps to pedals. It's kind of a big thing in the whole industry, isn't it? Like, not necessarily wanting to run a 120 watt head anymore.
Right. Well, it's going to depend on a lot of things, right? Because we did the pedal for three obvious reasons. We were being asked for it. That it's easier to expand, into like new markets and more budget-minded musicians with it, and it opens up a lot of cool new rig opportunities. And it's cool because we did it for those reasons, and it really took off. And but we're still all about the amps, right? Like our designer, he gets excited about big tube heads, and like it's cool to translate that into a pedal and have it turn out so well. I can play any Revv I want. Obviously, in my live rig, I've been using the G3 into the clean channel instead. Wow. I just like how it sounds. But it's a great solution. And the small heads now, but everything we did with the pedals supported the large amps too, which was one of my goals. It's like if more people can get a little slice of Revv into their hands and start figuring out what our tone is about, or maybe they can try it at their local music store, they're going to want the big head too. So it's cool that we didn't really have to abandon anything or do one thing or the other. We have big heads. They've been used by metal players for a long time that we have a lot of respect for, and like our artists worldwide. Then we really hit it off in Nashville, and we built some smaller heads with the 40 watts and built-in reverb because a lot of Nashville session guys are using us there. And now we're breaking out into pedals, and people are using them in conjunction with modelers or into their clean amps or with loop switchers or direct into their interface. And it's all come full circle with the small head we announced at NAMM. You're right.
Yeah, so that's kind of, the definite lead on, because the G3 and the G4 pedals, lots and lots of gain. So they were always designed to go in front of a clean channel, right, rather than just be a preamp, because that's the other new kind of fashion thing right now.
Don't get me started on that, man. It's like everything is in phases, right? But I feel like everybody remembered last year that you could run stuff direct into a power amp, and that's the new thing. And every demo, it's like, put it in the power amp. That's cool for some things. I've actually been a Metal Zone user for a long time, and it's because I clipped the clipping diodes out, and then you just have an EQ, and you can run it in your effects loop and do like cool lo-fi, like radio pass, like sound effects live. Like I've always liked Metal Zones. They're a fun little pedal, but it helps the Metal Zone out because there's so much high end, which normally is what you're losing when you go straight into a power amp. So it's cool that everybody has different ways of running the rigs, but I always tell people, if you're going to start it in one way, put it through a clean channel. That's how almost everybody uses it. If you have a live rig, then you have your clean channel and you can turn your pedal off and you have something besides a direct to power amp tone. And that's what they're really designed for, is going through a preamp. Now, some of my friends use the G3 and the G4 or other fantastic preamps, and they go direct into power amps with it. And you just have to dial it in recently, and it's cool to see people liking it in that kind of format. And I recommend going through something like Wall of Sound if you're going direct, or any of the Torpedo products, because then you can turn on the power amp simulation too, right? If you're using just the impulse response or the virtual cab, and that'll give you a lot of feedback.
It's funny you should say that. The Torpedo cab, they updated that recently, so it could do 2 virtual mics, and we did a video on that, and figured use a preamp pedal. And I was thinking, I'll use one of the 2 notes Le preamps because I've got all of those, and then I thought I'll be a bit of a troll, so I did the video with the Metal Zone instead. But what I did is I wound the distortion all the way off, and it's still got a little bit of crunchy gain. It's actually not that bad. But you get people in the comments going, a Metal Zone, but it's not nearly as bad a pedal as its reputation suggests.
Oh yeah, I got a Metal Zone just because I like to troll, like you said, and I would show up to my gigs, and I would have my Strymons and my Ethos and be running it through my Revv, and then there'd be a Metal Zone in the effects loop at the end of the chain, and they were like, what are you doing, dude? And it was always fun.
Yeah, so moving on to seeing as though we've already now briefly talked about 2 notes, let's talk about Revv and 2 notes, the whole D20 thing. How long behind the scenes was that an idea for? I mean, is that, now that it's public, I'm guessing that's not so much of a secret, right?
No, I mean, there's not really any secrets at all, to be honest. It's just we surprise launched it at NAMM because it's a pretty it's one of the first of its kind, right? It's the very first 2 notes Torpedo embedded, and it's at the same time as another reactive load and IR embedded amp. So we wanted to play our cards close to our chest on that, but now absolutely, yeah, there's no secrets. It was about all year, and our engineer Dan, co-owner and designer of all the tones, man, he's a genius. So we took our Dynamis platform, which is it's our clean channel, very American style, very clean, but compared to our generator amps, it's a little bit warmer, so it can take, like bright gain pedals even better. And if you scoop it or max the mids out, because it depends on what you're going for, you can get kind of D style tones out of it. We really like it. So first it came down to boiling that down to 20 watts. And we didn't want to just do a lunchbox head, right? Because that's what everybody's doing. And we didn't want to just do a clean head, because that's what everybody's doing. And we didn't want to just be the first 2 notes head, because that could be gimmicky if you didn't put any effort into it, right? So we tried to do all 3. So the idea was, and what a lot of the R&D process was getting it even smaller, getting it to work really well with the Torpedo, everything, because the core tones came pretty quickly. And the result is a tone that's not in the rest of our lineup, and a functionality that's not in the rest of our lineup, and a form factor that's not in the rest of our lineup. And we're really proud of it because people understand it immediately. So Sean Tubbs' demo, one of my favorite guitar players on earth, hit today. And some of the things that he was touching on in his demo, when he was going through the different virtual cab positions, he goes like, wow, the clean channel sounds really good. And he did all that. And he goes, but if you're in a studio, you can pull, because there's a push-pull gain pot on the front to make it gainier. And there's a 4-watt mode, so you can get a lot of power amp interaction and all that. So it's like, but even if you don't have any pedals in the studio, if you're just trying to get it up to get your tones going in the studio, you have your overdub gainier guitar parts right there with the push-pull. And I was like, that's a good point. And then there's people like our more metal-oriented customers that are like, oh, well, I just want a small tube amp that sounds and feels really good, and I'm going to put the G3 and the G4 in front, maybe with a little switcher, and then I have instant recall to all my tones. You can get whatever you want. And then there's like our worship-style guitarists that we work with a lot that are like, wow, I can go direct to front of house with this. They make me do silent stage everywhere, and I can combine it with the MIDI on my Strymons and my Eventides and everything like that. So I'm really happy that everybody is seeing the opportunity right out of the gate, especially because I work remotely. I'm not up in the shop in Canada, so I got to play it for the first time when I came in a week or so before WinterNam, because some of us flew in early for like dealer meetings and some content creation and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is I need one right now. So we're happy about it overall, just because people seem to understand the product, and we put a lot of effort into it. And the reception at NAM was amazing. You know, I always say that you could have something totally genius, like you could go back in time and invent sliced bread, and a week later you could have sold two and gone bankrupt. You never know. Like in business, like you can plan and plan and plan, but you don't know at the end of the day. There's too many variables, and it's going really well. And they're gonna start shipping in a month or two, like the first batch. And yeah, we just decided to work with Two Notes on it basically because we had been using the rack gear for years. It made the most sense when we were going to trade shows, when we were playing live. We fell in love with it, and we're like, we should put this in an amp. And now it's a great option for players out there now, I think, of a lot of different types and genres and rigs.
Mm. Shameless plug, the whole Two Notes thing works for me because we make cabinets for Two Notes. And
right.
Yeah, I think as of the end of this month, we're going to release our 40th cab for Two Notes. Oh, wow. A lot of them being the guitar cabs, and yeah, so it's going to be really exciting to get a lot of that out. I mean, if you've heard of Zilla cabs, right? Do a lot of the kind of prog rock stuff, but their cabs sound great with everything, I think. And
you shoot Zilla?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, like one of the like big 212s with like a V30 and a creamback like combo.
So I got that. Also got one called the Fat Baby, because that was the Fat Boy. The Fat Baby's like a 1x12, but it's as big almost as the 2x12.
Oh, okay.
But I've done it with loads of different speakers, because we work with Celestion a lot. So I've done Vintage 30, classic greenbacks, creambacks, redbacks, all sorts of crazy speakers. So there's different models going to be in there. So if you're the kind of guy, like, say with the D20, a lot of guys are going to imagine the sound in their head being a 1x12, right? Lunchbox head, yeah. Small amp. But we've done it where you can switch the speaker out. There's so many different ones. There's a new one called the Copperback that Celestion just released. And there's one in my front room right now. It arrived yesterday. So I'm going to capture that and get that in the Two Notes store, so that anyone who orders a Revv D20, of course, the choice of... I'm guessing it comes with some of the stock Two Notes cabs.
It comes with our Revv cabs.
Oh, right, yeah, makes sense.
We're encouraging people to buy third-party, because what we do, it's going to have on the front, they're all still being finalized for the ones that ship, but it's going to be on the front, you know, like kind of ones that make sense stylistically. So our 112, which has an ET90, which is like a high-powered creamback basically in there. And then we'll have another of that 112, but we're going to like add in a ribbon mic and put more room sound. And then all the way up to like a totally dry 412 for like high gain. We're going to provide that for you on the front.
Right.
But obviously, without buying any additional cabs, you can go in and modify the virtual cabinet of all the Revv ones. But we use the WGS, the Veteran 30 and the ET90. So if somebody wanted greens, for example, because that's going to be a sought after tone for this kind of amp, I think. Like, it would be good. I bet it would sound great with the Zillow with greenbacks in it. Wow.
Yeah, so that's something we've done, and they're in the store now.
Oh, nice. Go get them.
I'm quite impressed that they managed to get the whole cab, because this is a torpedo cab I've got right here. That's not small. And they managed to fit that in a lunchbox head with the full valve amp and the load part, right? Because this doesn't have that load box part. Although I suppose it doesn't have to be as big for a 20 watt. There's the usual like 100 watt load box. I'm guessing that's how they did it.
This is the reactive load from the Torpedo Live.
Oh.
It's full reactive load in there. And it's basically the Cab M's functionality. So it doesn't have all the stuff from the studio. We were figuring this out after the fact, like after we had already announced it. So like it doesn't have the studio's compression in it, which I assumed it was going to have. So I remember one of our videos, I was like, compression in big letters up across the screen. I was like, oh no. But you get the reverb, you get all the mics, you get two mics, you get the EQ, you get changing all of your You get changing all of your speakers and the cabinet itself to taste. So it's going to be a lot for everybody, whether you want to find your favorite tone and set it and forget it, whether or not you want to use it, control it with MIDI in your loop switcher and have your solo tone change to like a 412 with more reverb and the EQ boosted in the highs or anything like there. We want it to be able to work for people that never want to turn the two notes on once, and for people that are never going to run it through a real cab once. But not to sound too promo-y, because there's a lot of great amps out there, right? But it's you guys had me on and I appreciate it, and that's I'm really excited about it, because like I said, I could play the Generator 120 every day, but I can't wait for my D20 to get done when I finally have one, because I'm going to do a lot of stuff with it.
Yeah, man, if I get to play with the D20, to be honest, I'll probably use it at home quite a lot, because if you've seen any of our videos, we have a studio, right? But
right.
I live more than half an hour's drive away. I can't be there all the time. And
right.
So I find it hard to write stuff at home. I never used to be a Valve purist, but the more I play, I find it difficult when I'm home playing with VST amps, like virtual amps. I was considering bringing a 100-watt head home and a two notes captor or something like that, but if I could end up with something like the D20, somewhere that isn't a studio, I mean, hey, that's something you can just pick up and move back into the studio, right?
That's the idea, right? I want it to work for people that just want a good Valve amp. I want it to work for people that maybe converted to modeling for a little while and are looking to come back, or maybe augment their modeler with it, like a Helix and 4-cable method around it. You know, there's a lot of options. And I'm with you, man. I started out on tube amps. Well, after I had all the, modeling amps everybody starts with that are like $100. But yeah, and then I got a Helix right when it came out. I've had a couple Axe FXs. Sometimes I would use them together, sometimes I would use them separately, sometimes I would use one the modeler as a backup, and I don't know, it's I'm open to all the technology, and it sounds really cool. We're actually getting the Revv Generator 120 in the Helix in an upcoming patch. They bought one from us, and we were like, oh, it's happening to us. We're getting modeled, and we kind of had a meeting. It's like, what do we think about this? And I realized for years I've been saying that people are idiots if they get mad about being modeled, because it's PR, and generally people that are buying a modeler aren't also going to be inclined to buy a $3,000 boutique amp and all that. And then I was like, and I played the Helix before, and it's great. And so I was thinking, like, we called them up, and it's like, hey, yeah, this is totally cool. Use our real name and don't call it like the Bev toaster or whatever. Call it like the Revv Generator. And they were like, yeah. So we signed all the documents, and for the purposes of that, licensed a name to them. And so if it all works out, it's going to be a Revv 120 in there, which we're excited about, because that's just another way people can hear about Revv, right? And I always talk about how companies should get along. I don't think Revv has competition. Like, we compete with ourselves. I just try to put our best foot forward in a large market of amps. There's lots of high gain amps, there's lots of clean amps. Like, people love all kind of amps. We're finishing setting up like a little Revv studio in the shop in Winnipeg, and when we start showing footage from there, shooting content there, and even just pictures, you're gonna see Bassmen and JMPs and Friedmans and rectifiers and everything. Like, we just like amps. It's not about picking a team. So I'm definitely happy for anybody that wants to use us in the Helix, or anybody that wants to get a pedal, or anybody that's going to use the D20 just for two notes and never even plug it into a cab. It's there's a lot of cool options with it. And yeah, it's going to be cool to not only be able to play quietly for you at home when you're not in your studio, but yeah, like go straight into, like, I'm sure you have like a little recording like monitor rig at home, whatever, and you get real tube tone and feel and stuff out of that, with all the benefits of two notes, fucking reverb and EQ. I love all that. It's crazy how easy it is to get a great sound with the two notes technology that they basically invented, right? The very first ever reactive load, tied for first with some other people that were working on it with impulse responses, but they went another way at doing the virtual cabinet, like the malleable one, not a static IR. And that's another reason I wound up working for two notes. And I say they because I can't take credit for any of that. I always say if I designed any of this shit, nobody would play it. I don't have that part of my brain turned on. But I'm happy to be working with Two Notes and helping them out with stuff now as well, just because the product is really good, and it's a great time to be a guitarist because there's so many good options out there.
Yeah, there is so much to go at. I mean, it's interesting that you say that you've said to Yamaha Line 6 that we want you to use the name. It's funny, I always used to be one of those guys that had pods and all sorts of things. And funnily enough, there's amp makers back before YouTube was a big deal, right? Like Divided by 13, for example, boutique little manufacturer. I would have no idea who they were if it wasn't for the fact that there was a model of one of their amps in the pod in the early days. And it was kind of like, who is this? I've heard of Marshall, I've heard of Mesa. What the hell is this? It's the kind of thing where...
We're not the divided by 13 target market. Like, I love those amps, but 5 years ago, I wouldn't have known who they were. And it's not because divided by 13 is a tiny brand. It's because, like, I'm not the blues lawyer, guitar emporium, like dentist clientele for that. You know, I was buying like Black Stars and the little EVHs and stuff. I just couldn't afford it. And then yeah, now I've played like every Dr. Z bottle I've ever found out in the wild, and it's like, wow, these are crazy. It worked for them. And no disrespect to anybody that does worry about getting modeled, because in their like, business is a very personal thing, especially when it's a small shop and like it's your baby and it's your livelihood and you want people to just enjoy it. So especially if you've been all tube all the time since you've been born, I could see being worried about it, but I would like to lay anybody's qualms to rest on that, because the cat's out of the bag. You can't go back in time and uninvent modeling. So why don't you get some PR out of it, right?
Absolutely. The way that I see it, the way that the modelling has always kind of been is that as much as it's kind of shaky ground legally to use somebody else's name, it's not illegal to make something sound like something else. Right. So it's always been that the guys, I don't know, Line 6 and whoever, all the modelling guys could say, this kind of sounds like a Marshall Plexi, this kind of sounds like it, and then at the end have the little legal disclaimer that says we have no affiliation with these guys, you know, that kind of thing. So why not collaborate with them and go, that doesn't sound like our amp, here's how to make it sound like our amp so that people have a better impression of us.
And people have started doing that with plugins mostly, right? Like the Brainworks UAD stuff. You can go get the Friedmans, you get the Sirs, and those are incredible. But I would think in the long term, there's going to kind of be a singularity with all this stuff. But yeah, man, like we just love gear. That's what it's all about. And I happen to work with companies whose gear I really, really like, and I'm really thankful for that. It's kind of turned into, just by the nature of the questions that have came up so far, like the Revv advertisement spot on the Hopcast. But it's I like all gear.
Yeah, man.
When it came to licensing the name, did you then get any quality control over what it sounded like, or were you kind of left? Did you get to sign off on the sound at all, or?
It's not even done yet. I had a meeting with them at NAMM, and they were like, "Oh, we don't even have an alpha of the firmware with this in it on one of our Helixes for you to try yet. It takes a long time, but it's all business, man. Like, we agreed to license it, but then I'm sure you'll know this. They even in the Helix, they don't call it Ampeg, even though that's owned by the same company. And apparently that's just something they've been reticent to do. And so we fully licensed it and we gave it to them on our end. And even if we hadn't done that, they said, like, hey, if you want to review these, you can. If you politely asked us to not even do the 120, we would probably just cancel it. Like, they've been really easy to work with.
That's really, that says a lot about them and about what they're looking to achieve. That's brilliant.
Oh, yeah, I've been talking to a lot of guys there, but one dude, I'd always seen him online and like in the Helix forums and stuff, but I got to meet him in person at NAMM, and talking to him via email about all this was Eric from Line 6, and he has sort of an ineffable job title that he described to me, and I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool, because I asked him, like, yo, I know you're like Mr. Helix, what's do you design, like, do you do all the DSP, what do you do? And he goes, my entire job at Line 6, and I hope I'm not getting this wrong because I'm like throwing him under the bus now. So, but like, I am the product manager for Helix. So everything about Helix from ground up to bottom, like I make sure that it makes sense and that our customers are happy. And I work with the engineers and all that, but the Helix is my thing. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. That's such a cool role for Line 6 to give them at the company. And I think it speaks volumes. Even just it was good when it came out, and it's like twice as good now. And we're going to get to test it and give feedback. I'm sure it's going to be fine. And I just hope that all the corporate red tape can be cut and we can be Revv in there. Because it's okay on our end, but then I also understand if it's just like a line they don't want to cross, and people are like, why is there one official one and 120 unofficial ones? You know, so I see that from their point of view. But I really want to be the Revv Generator 120. Both gain channels are coming in a very soon firmware update, and then the Clean and Crunch channel are coming after that.
Good stuff. That's a lot to go at. Well, a couple of questions for us in the chat. I'm guessing Bryce Bloomfield is a friend of yours because his first comment was just Kyle sucks.
Oh yeah, that's actually an old Aristides in joke. My very first custom from them before I worked for them, I was kind of being annoying. I was like, hey, can I get your Seafoam but like slightly tweaked to a bunch of other bullshit? And the shop was like, sure, because they're great to work with, and that's one of the reasons I wound up working for them all these years. And they named the finish Kyle Sucks because they said like it looks almost exactly as good as the normal one, but it makes that one look slightly worse. They look identical, but yours is better, and this is garbage. So they named my guitar Kyle Sucks. Yeah.
Good stuff. Another comment from Bryce. Will the Helix patch be called Vroom instead of Revv?
We'll see what they'll come up with if they don't want to use, the name Revv. Vroom would be a good one. I have no idea. Like I said, I'm interested in what they're going to replace Generator with, though. Like some random piece of electronic apparatus if they don't use Generator. That would be funny.
And a follow-on question from me. If it all goes well with having that implemented in the Helix, do you think it'll then go on to be incorporated into the Spider 6?
I'm not sure. You know what? When they drew up the contract, they were so kind to us. They, if I'm remembering correctly, we have unilateral rights to pull the licensing with no notice. So, but who knows? That new Spider 5, like, man, I wish I had that when I was growing up. Like, how cool is it to have all those little options and something that you can actually afford when you're a kid, So who knows if there's a Spider 6 and there's a Revv Generator, like, insane tone in the Spider 6, maybe it'll be really good. I would
love to see that happen, if only to watch Glenn Fricker explode.
Oh yeah, hey, that's his MO, right? Yeah, he'll
Revv good, Line 6 bad. watch him just struggle with that. And a question from Alex Kelly: if 2 notes is so good, why isn't there 3 notes?
Right?
Yeah, no, I get that all the time.
Yeah, Alex is the dad joke master. He's local to me, good friend, and I can't wait until we run out of channels and we just keep adding new G pedals, and we're going to get to the G6 pedal. We're going to have to put like a private jet on the front of it. I think that'll be a good one.
It's just a bass drop constantly.
Yeah. Just automated bass drop, like a tempo knob, and then like an amplitude knob, and it just sends bass through the front of your head. I love that.
That sounds like something that would probably go on the next Periphery album.
Oh, I'm so excited for the new Periphery album. Misha came by to say hi to me at NAMM because I used to manage his pedal company when it was being founded, and he still stops by to say hi to me. He's a super nice guy, and I talked to him for like half an hour about the new album, and it's just cool how excited he was about it, because I'm a drummer first. I'm a hack guitarist that started like in my 20s, but I love Matt from Periphery. He's a killer drummer.
He is.
And then I just started shooting the shit with him about, how are the new drum sounds going? Because he switched endorsements, and Misha's just like, these are the best drum sounds we ever got, and it's so cool. And the writing process, it's been so smooth, and it's cool to see how passionate they still are, especially after leaving Sumerian and they're going to distribute themselves and all that. That they're still just super excited for their album. I can't wait for it to come out.
They're doing a Radiohead.
Yeah.
Screw the record label, we'll make our own. And fair play to them. The opening single, Blood Eagle, was absolutely brutal, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's funny. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's so brutal." I'm like, "That's cool," and I like the song, but it's like I also like the pussy non-metal parts of Periphery a lot too. So I'm excited to hear all that as well.
Me too, but that just particularly as an opener, as a statement, was just like, okay, wow.
Oh yeah.
Right then. Yeah. Got a question from one of our viewers in the chat. Liam, would you do the honors?
Yeah, it says your Instagram said that you're marketing manager for Aristides.
Aristides? Is that how do we pronounce
Aristides.
it? That's first question.
I've never actually seen it written. Yeah, okay, my bad. How prevalent do you see multi-scale guitars moving forward? Is this a passing trend like it was in the 90s, or is it here to stay?
Okay, so 2 notes on that. Anybody has any license to mispronounce that name because it's named after a Greek dude living in the Netherlands, or not? It's a Dutch guy, but named after a Greek name. So there's a bunch of levels of removal. The Dutch guys, they pronounce it Aristides, like all short vowels. So that's how I say it. The only one I'll get on you for is Aristides. I hear that a lot. I'm like, come on, like cover black. But anyway, I've been with. I don't know how long I've been with Aristides now. It must be creeping up on 3 years. And they were one of the first people that really believed in me when I was quitting all my day jobs. And because my background is in economics and business with a focus on game theory and industrial organization. Like I decided long ago I wasn't going to do music stuff because I wanted to make money. But I got tired of that and I went into music stuff. And even just they were paying me $200 a month because I hit them up and I was like, I love you guys. Please give me a job. And they were like, okay, you can answer emails on the site for $200 a month. And I was like, hell yeah. And it's just grown and grown and grown. And I've never left them. And as of this year, they finally promoted me to a marketing position because that's my expertise. And up until then, that entire time, we had been selling more guitars than we made. So there was zero budget on free guitars for artists, sending to YouTubers, quick ads. We did literally nothing. So this year, we can actually start doing that again. I'm very excited about it. The thing with multi-scale guitars, because they're multi-scale instruments that go back to Renaissance times. Obviously, Novak's, who has trademarked or patented or whatever, fanned, which is why everybody says multi-scale now, been doing it forever. Custom basses had crazy specs going back to the late 60s with Alembic and stuff. So I think that it's always going to be around and growing in size, but it's not going to replace straight scale or anything like that. We did multi-scale everything. So at first we did just an 8 because we wanted to put out the best 8 around. And I think in general, in almost all circumstances, you can argue that a multi-scale guitar is superior to a straight scale for 8s. Now, because you're sacrificing a lot in the high registers. So some people don't need that, right? Like Meshuggah, it's amazing and they play the greatest riffs that you ever could on a straight scale. But for most people that want a guitar to be really playable and versatile, you probably want a fan on 8. So that's why we did that. But the benefits of a fan are so many-fold if you're not using a trem, because for the most part, there's still some compromises in trem systems with fans, not all the time. But think about all the opportunities. So say you play in drop C and you like how 11 to 56 feels, but you want to do the periphery low A thing sometimes and you don't want to put a 64 on that to make it work. Boom, you're sorted out. If you're like me, so our 6-string is 25 to 26.1. I play Elixir, who does not make half gauges, and I some tunings at certain just strat scale don't make any sense to me. So if I put 10s and I get that 25-inch scale on top in standard, that's perfect, so. And obviously, the whole thing with intonation being more accurate, that's not true unless you get into the very bottom ranges of tuning extremely low with an extremely fat gauge where you would actually run out of intonation range to move the saddle backwards. But you're going to get a more even feel in tone, not only from that progressive tension that you make, but because each string, as it increases in pitch, is getting slightly warmer because the scale length is being reduced. So chords sound really, really full and chimey, and it's a great system that I think has a lot of merits, as proven on bass. I think there are a lot of tones that people are used to that have become the standard in modern metal and other genres for bass that simply aren't possible for the most part, depending on the tuning with traditional basses. So we at least are really all in on the multi-scale thing for offering it as an option. We have 6, we have 7, we have 8. We're going to do more multi-scales in the future and everything. So like I said, I'm not the designer. I'm just a nerd. Nobody would play the guitars if I was building them. I cobble together part strats and stuff for fun. That's about the extent of my knowledge, of my practical ability on that. But I think it's just a thing. It's like asking, like, oh, is Floyd Rose a fad, or active pickups are a fad? People like what they like, you know. And there's some people that are never going to see the need for a fan. There's some people that are only going to play multi-scale guitars, so we'll see. But it's always going to be around.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the whole multi-scale thing. I'm mostly a bass player, even though I play guitar as well. And I very much found, because I like quite an aggressive, bright bass tone, even for non-metal applications. Unless, you know, it's really not appropriate. And I definitely find it's kind of, say, playing up at the 12th fret on the E string sounds completely different to playing the same note on the D string right down the other side of the neck. Because of that warmth, like you say, it makes suddenly it's half as short a scale, and suddenly it sounds like a bass ukulele. the whole top end thing is just kind of gone. So I'd be very interested. I generally play jazz basses, that kind of thing. I'd be interested to see that kind of idea with the scale kind of fanned out so it's longer at the low end.
And I love jazz basses. There's no problem with that. I think that some people assume that if you're a bass player in 2019, like, you're a poser if you don't have a ding wall. Like, oh no, how did we get great bass tones on Van Halen 1 without a ding wall? You know, like how it hadn't been invented yet. And I love ding walls, and I mirror your sentiment. I had a 5-string ding wall, and I was playing 1975 covers in standard on it. Like, I like clean tones, like, but so anybody can create their music however way they want. But I think that the lower your tuning gets, a fan becomes very, very compelling on bass specifically. And I think in general, like, I prefer how a baritone guitar sounds in E standard. If you give me a 26.5, like, on E standard, I think that sounds great. I love the chiminess. I love all of that. But once you start getting in, like, below B territory, you're really going to get a clarity benefit from a longer scale length. And that's not to say, like, Carcass did heart work on Les Pauls, like, with stock Les Pauls. Like, if you want, like, a sludgier tone, like, Isis played, I think it was drop F on Gibson scale guitars. You know, like, you could do that. But if you want clarity and you want attack, you should be looking at baritones, anything, like, once you start getting to B or lower. And at a certain point, you start sacrificing playability and warmth on the top end of the guitar. So I just caught another question, and the 2 notes load is reactive. That's basically what 2 notes invented all these years ago. Was they were the first to come out with a reactive load instead of a resistive load. And just in case you're asking, in the D20, it's a reactive load, and it's a load from the Torpedo Live,
which is a great load. I think it's the same load in the Captor, and I swear by the Captor. It's a great piece of kit. Fun thing about the Captor is it doesn't need a power source, so if you get but it's got a little fan in it that's powered by the sheer volume of the amp. So if you've got something like a Marshall Plexi on 11 and you go, suddenly the Captor out of nowhere goes, it's like, what's that? Oh god. Oh, it's like, no, that's supposed to happen. It's the funniest thing when people jump out their skin because it's suddenly they're playing next to a hairdryer.
Oh yeah, well, that's a question I get sometimes because 2 Notes initially brought me on to do, like, customer service and social media. Now I'm not pretending that I'm some, like, you know, like, mastermind behind the company. I help them out on some marketing ops now, primarily in America. And I get that question a lot. It's like, hey, my load box is making like a little bit of sound when I'm playing, and it's like, if you have a torpedo reload and you like listen at whisper volume, a little bit of that volume, like when the load is being dispersed, you can hear a little bit of the guitar signal coming out physically of the reload, even though it doesn't have speakers. That is a thing. The technology is fascinating. Like I said, I could never design anything like that. So it's amazing to me that a bunch of crazy French engineers have been doing this for like a huge chunk of their lives now, and kind of set the standard for a lot of things that came after it. That's why I wanted to, even in a small way, work for Two Notes. I think they're deserving of a lot of success.
Yeah, they are great people, and I've always liked working with them. And they're not afraid to work with the little guy as well, which is great for us, especially at the
Right.
beginning. I first got in contact with Guillaume, the CEO of Two Notes. I literally just sent him an email, CEO of a company. I was like, hey man, I like your software. I'd really like to get a version of my own cab in there. How can I do that? And he not only replied, but he took the time to give me all the details. And then he's like, well, if we're going to do this, you may as well sell them. You can't sell them unless you were a company. And then, of course, I reply with, oh, well, we are a company. We're a recording studio. Yeah. And a few years down the line, here we are, like I said, about to hit our 40th cab. So, yeah.
Congrats.
But it's the kind of thing where on the Two Note store or Hot Pole Studios, we get mentioned in the same breath as Revv, Mesa, Celestion, and I think that's fantastic. But it just so happens that I was cheeky and nerdy enough to go like, hey, I really like your stuff. I'm really nerdy. I can do this. I want to do something that's a bit custom.
Oh yeah, and everybody's gotta start somewhere, man. Like I said, that band I'm working with, EP, starts tonight, and I met them because they ordered an Aristides from me when the dude was 14, I think. Just turned 16, and his first EP's coming out, and he's 1,000 times better at guitar than I am. And everybody's got to start somewhere. When did I graduate college? I graduated college, and I had my day job in 2015. So I'm coming up on 4 years now of quitting, and then just taking. Like, so you're a recording studio, so you have that going for you, and then you can kind of get into like the social marketing space and stuff with all this, and that's super cool. But I kind of came from hanging out in forums and just meeting people, and it was like internships, and then working for minimum wage, and then trying to climb up the ladder. And I took an editor-in-chief job at a guitar mag, and I took some like random consulting contracts, and I got the job with Aristides, and my big break with what was getting asked, like when it was founded, to CEO Horizon Devices, and that was really huge for me. And they've gone on without me since I've left to do even crazier things, and that allowed me to really pad up my resume and kind of do what I want. And I wound up getting with Revv and all this. So a lot of people are always asking me, which is what, and I'm going off on this tangent because I just think it's cooler than like, oh, buy Revv stuff. And it's because people ask me all the time. It's like, wow, your day job is in music, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty decent. It took a long time of grinding, but yeah, I get paid to do the back end stuff. And how do you do that? And it's like, you just got to put yourself out there. And it's like you emailed Guillaume, and you wound up getting cabinets in the store and doing all sorts of demo work for them. If you're helpful to people and you're honest and you develop, even if it's like a really niche skill set, like you're good at recording and stuff, it's like if you develop a skill set and you're good at it and you're straightforward and you just keep chugging at it, you'll get where you want to go. And that's like, Pete Thorne's doing his How to Be a Pro Musician right now, and there's a lot of other cool podcasts about that. And I think just anything that can help inspire people to get into space where they want to make their living, and like that's what's really cool to me. And I figured I would touch on that because I get asked that all the time.
Yeah, man. I completely lost my train of thought there. There was something I was going to ask you, and it just kind of went poof. At this juncture,
My bad. I just don't
talking
want to look like a Revv shill, or a two-note shill or an Aristides shill. So some lifestyle stuff to interject in there is good.
Oh, I get that. It was, we work closely with some companies more than others, right? But we're just gear nerds. We love working with cool stuff, but I think more than anything over the last few years, what I've realised is I really enjoy the most working with people, real people, where you send, like two notes. I talked to the CEO of the company, person to person. The guys at Sontronics, I know them personally. You know, the Paul from Zilla, I can call him and on the phone, and he's just like, "Hey, dude, what's up?" Those kind of things make me much more loyal to a company than someone who's just a high up person with an email address who replies 7 days later when they feel like it. You know, that personal connection makes a huge thing. And I think that's the kind of thing that's not only in gear, but just in music in general, really coming out over the last 5 or 10 years. Like, I think the reason that Periphery, as a great example, are where they are now is not just because they have great music, because so many bands have great music, right? Mm-hmm. But they're where they are because Misha has been on forums for a decade or more, talking to people and being like, "Hey, here's a thing that you can do. Here's something I tried." And then just the same with all of them. They're real people as far as the public's concerned. And I think that's a big thing that's helped to catapult them to where they are, because as much as the music is great, it's not just some faceless noise. It's individual people who, like, guitar nerds can relate to someone like Misha, and drum nerds can definitely relate to someone like Matt Halpin, who's very much kind of not only a drummer's drummer, but just I listen to his podcast, Chocolate Croissants. It's generally about not just drumming, but workouts and that kind of stuff. He's a great person to listen to.
Matt is, man, it's so I started out as like an old and like progressive and complicated music nerd, like in high school. Just like, oh, I'm so much cooler because I listen to like Opeth or whatever. My favorite band of all time is Steely Dan. I'm like a Steve Gadd guy. I love that kind of flow. And Matt Halpert, he's playing heavy music, but he has that economy of motion across the kit and the real feel for ghost notes and stuff like that. But I play a Ludwig Vistalite, the acrylic kit, with a 6.5-inch steel snare. Every snare hit should sound like a door slamming shut, like the Riot snare. And Matt does that. And he has all of that, you know, like old school serious flow and economy of motion. And I love Matt. But you're right. Gear and personality and marketing and music, it's all intertwined now. I think you have to be able to do everything. And you know, it's easy for me to talk because like I'm not out like releasing music trying to make a living on it, but you know, like streaming is the big debate right now. And I think that sucks for artists that aren't getting paid as much as they used to for creating their art, but it's like with modeling in the amps, right? You can't uninvent that. Like, it's a big thing now. And unfortunately, people have to deal with it. The artists have to deal with it. I don't think they're going to successfully legislate against it. And that sucks for the artists that they can't get paid as much for their art and what they've created. But it's improvise, adapt, overcome. Now it's like you're going to have to market more. You're going to have to come up with alternative revenue streams if you're trying to make your living off of it. And even if that's a tough pill to swallow, I'm really proud of bands that are seeing that on the front end and doing some more things in line with marketing that looks like what hip hop does or what Periphery's done with gear companies and stuff like that. Because I just want all my friends that are out there making killer music to be successful. And I think it's you have to adapt because streaming won't go away.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. Liam, thoughts on streaming?
It's a tough one. I think we used to have a record label ourselves kind of, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
And this was one of the things that came to us, and the reason why we decided to just focus on the studio was exactly what you're saying. In the bands now, because we were working a lot with in Manchester and England, obviously, and we were working with lots of small bands that were just getting started, and asking kind of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids to basically turn themselves into a marketing company because of the fact that, yeah, the best way to get the music out there was streaming. People aren't buying music anymore. It was impossible. These kids didn't have a clue that we're doing it. And even when we're trying to tell them, like literally, okay, here's the marketing plan, but you guys need to be implementing it and being a part of it and creating your own material and creating your own content. And there'd always be maybe one person in the band that had a knack for it, and the rest of them just couldn't. And it's so hard. I think it's really difficult. And it's great for if you've got that skill set, then anyone can really push their band forward, and it's fantastic for those people. But I do feel I think streaming is a big part of the reason why this is the case. But now, being in a band or starting a band on your own and trying to launch it, if you have the ability to play great music and also be a great online marketer, then you've got something. If you've only got one of those two things, you're going to struggle. And obviously, one of the things has to be being able to play good music. But yeah,
it's not the only thing anymore, right?
No, I know, and I think it's got to be more than just one person in the band as well. That's the key thing about it. That's what we always found.
Yeah. I think it's nobody, even if a band is a main artist with side guys, I think there needs to be little factions within a band as long as they're not working against each other. So if you have like two dudes that are more like engineering focused, and when you go play some shitty pub and you can like talk to the front of house guy if you have one, and try and figure out your tone. And then there's more people that are like, they're better at networking and they know how to get tours booked and stuff. Like everybody needs somebody to work off of in a band. Nobody wants to be the only guy doing blank.
Yeah, so we ran into that situation where it was that, wasn't it? Where there was always one person that was amazing at it, and in fact, and ironically, some of those people then got on to join other bands and do really well. So
yeah.
I suppose that experience then from that, when you take it into a new band, you're not going to fall for the same mistake twice.
Yeah, it's true. I saw more questions come through. Jerona11 said Haunted Shores versus Corellia. I love Haunted Shores, especially the early stuff when it was like super melodeath and had vocals. Wraith is one of my favorite songs that they did, but and I guess it's because I kind of got into the prog gent scene late, so maybe like I wasn't around when Corellia was first hitting and it didn't grab me, but I never really got the Corellia hype. No hate to them, even though they probably people are expecting a lot of hate because of what they've how they've turned out so far.
Yeah, I've not really listened to Corellia. I've listened to Haunted Shores through finding out through Periphery myself, but I think that's kind of the heaviest that I generally go. I mean, I used to listen to some stuff like Death when I was a kid, but I generally kind of Dream Theater, that kind of prog is my bag. So that kind of heaviness, it's cool, but I can only listen to it for so long before I get a tension headache.
I was legit like a buddy of mine that's mostly like into indie and folk and stuff. He's like, hey, like I want to try out Death, the band, not the genre, like Death. And I so it's funny, like I recommended him an album, and I right before the podcast I was listening to Scream Bloody Gore, the reissue. It's funny you bring them up.
Oh man. Yeah, so another question was talk about the juggernauts being killer pickups. I definitely agree there. My Les Paul has juggernauts in for strange coincidence. I mean, we were talking about string gauges and everything. I'm generally a Les Paul player, although I'm looking to get into something with a longer scale because I'm starting to record heavier stuff that's lower tuned.
Right.
But I had my Les Paul recently tuned with elixirs, which I'll wave in front of the camera, but these are the baritone elixirs, which are 12 to 68.
Nice.
And I had those down tuned to drop A, which the juggernauts really helped, because originally I had the stock Gibson pickups in there, and they're kind of crap. For heavy music, they're not very clear. They've got that kind of mid-gain rock and roll thing, and that's cool. But the juggernauts really gave me that edge. I was struggling with that low A. I think partly that the string was too thick to ring out properly.
It's a double-edged sword. So for stability, the lower you tune, the fatter the gauge you need. But you get a warmer, thicker tone the thicker the gauge is, and it starts to vibrate like conically, like less like a string, and you start it doesn't ring as clearly. You're right. So in a perfect world, if tension weren't a thing, guitars would sound better if the high E had a 46 and the low E had a 9. Like it would sound really amazing, but you just can't do that. The 68's about what you need for an A at 24 3/4, but yeah, it's going to present on a tunematic bridge maybe some intonation issues and definitely a clarity problem. But juggernauts aren't really my pickup. I really like them in his signature guitar. I played them right when they came out, and I think they suited that guitar well. And I've tried installing them in some other guitars, and they've been hit or miss, but I think they're a very smart pickup. The ceramic magnet and Alnico 5 magnet hybrid is a really cool design, and they split really well.
I think the thing that I like the most about them, generally I'm not playing in drop A in the Les Paul, it's usually drop D.
Yeah.
The thing I like the most about them is when I flick from the bridge to the neck is so much less powerful a pickup that my amp cleans up straight away. And that's something, I don't know if you noticed that about a Juggernaut set?
Yes.
Because most balanced pickup sets, I just find that you switch to a neck pickup, especially on a Gibson, it just turns to mud. Because, especially with any amount of gain, that balancing of the neck pickup just means it's overwound, which means that you get more low end and you end up with a useless humming tone.
People get neck humbuckers so wrong. And people forget, go play a 59 Les Paul like a real one. Those pickups are so bright. It sounds like an angry Telecaster. They're really chimey, and they're really thinned out in the mids and musical. And but people somehow have associated neck humbucker tones over time with like the Santana tone knob rolled off thing, where it sounds like a square wave, just infinite sustain. And that I don't think that's what it's about, because I'm more of a single coil guy. And a set that works great for that is I use Pete Thorne's Thornbuckers in some of my guitars, and the bridge is Alnico 4, and the neck is Alnico 5. So you automatically have a warmer sound that you dial in to account for on the bridge, so your amp tone is going to be brighter than normal, and then you go to the neck, and it's all nice and chimey and doesn't sound too bassy, and the coils on those aren't evenly wound. It's not like one coil is 4K and the other coil is 4K. And that creates some separation in the notes, more like a single coil. And even when I'm playing very heavy music, I tend to play PAF style pickups, because you can hit it harder with pedals or everything, and they're so musical and really, really well balanced. And that's a challenge with the high gain sets. And I'll say Aristides, our bare knuckles are pretty good at that. The custom set, they're not my first choice for like down-tuned, very tight, aggressive music. But if you need a guitar that can do everything, they're a very, very well-balanced set. And then for higher gain pickups to do that well, I love the Fishman Classics. I think in the neck, especially, they don't get too muddy.
I think that's quite an interesting aspect of it. Is hitting pedals with too much pickup output. That's something a lot of people, I don't think they think of. They think more output means more metal. And it's not necessarily the case, right?
Yeah, I play low output pickups like in drop B sometimes. And I mean, my rig, I go through a clean boost that takes off low end, and then I go through like an actual overdrive, and then I go into amp gain. There's a lot of boosting and tone shaping going through that, you know? Like, you don't necessarily, like, aftermarket humbuckers were invented before master volume amps. Like, the reason Al Di Meola was playing a super distortion was so he could get amp breakup. You know, like same thing with Van Halen 1. That was half of that album was on a super distortion, the shark guitar half, the non-trem half, and it was just to get more gain out of amps before there were gain knobs or before there were readily available boost pedals.
It's an interesting hangover from more gain.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're about to reach the hour mark, so let's quickly look at this week's news articles and discuss them with Kyle, and then I think it'll be time to sign off. Yes. So let's switch to the screen. So let's start with this news article. Apparently MySpace have lost 50 million songs. Probably including some of my songs, but I've long since forgotten about.
Before. I had one drunken night at uni with I had like a really basic recording setup in my room, and me and two of my friends who I don't see very often, one lives in New Zealand now, got together and made like a little EP, and it was always on MySpace, and every now and then I'd go back to it, and I've just checked and it is gone. I never downloaded it thinking, my MySpace will always be there. Right. MySpace is still there, but literally if you go to play the music, the track goes to play and it's just nothing's there. 50 million songs.
The thing is, how do you lose that? I mean, losing
server migration,
losing a connection to those files, okay,
like,
but
it was such a big cultural icon. But at that point, this far into MySpace's business cycle, was the burden even on them to like still maintain that for people? It's like it's like a really old MMO being shut down, right? And you can't play it.
But surely if you do that, you give people an announcement. I think for them just to have lost 50 million songs overnight, like if they were to announce, say, okay, we're shutting down MySpace Music. If there's anything on there you need to download it. You've got 3 months to do it. That's fine. But to lose the songs just out of nowhere, I don't think that's acceptable at all.
Oh yeah, that's garbage. It could have been announced or whatever. I just mean it's kind of expectations. It's been 10 years since anybody's logged into MySpace, and that sucks. Like it's personal for me because a lot of scenes I like were really prevalent on MySpace. Like the only place that you can listen to, I'm sure I'll go find a rip somewhere, but on MySpace, the early Panic at the Disco demos that they sent to Pete Wentz so they could get signed, they were super heavy. You'd be surprised. Like there was like serious like rock instrumentation in there. They bang, and they've never been released as B-sides or bonus tracks anywhere. That's gone forever now, as far as I know. And people are gonna have their own music or some weird underground black metal or anything that they lost, and that sucks. But then on the other hand, I'm just like, man, if I were still logging into MySpace to listen to music, I would have like recorded it by now, to make sure I would have had it.
I mean, you're probably right. It's probably one of those things that most of the songs that people have lost are like, oh shit, I should have downloaded that. I'll go on with the rest of my life. It's not going to affect me too much. Yeah, these songs that I've lost, they're not going to affect me too much, but it's still pretty shitty.
Oh yeah.
I just don't understand how you do it in this server migration. Like, did they tried to do a file move instead of copy first? Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't get it.
Right?
How big even is 50 million songs? I mean, I'm guessing the MP3s on MySpace would have been fairly small, low bitrate stuff, but that's got to be...
64.
Yeah, sure, you can put them on an iPod first. Just download them to your phone before you do the transfer. Like, come on.
Okay, moving on. Very quickly, Calvin Harris is set to sell a luxury LA recording studio home, so like a live-in writing studio, for more than $5 million.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw this one in case you wanted to buy it. I thought, this might be one for you, Adam.
Yeah, when business is going well, sure. I'll let you know. We'll move to LA. We'll get that place. It'll be fine.
So one of my questions was going to be, so this studio is apparently worth 5.75 million. Do you think the music that you could record would sound $5 million better than recording it in the studio you have?
Not a chance.
Although it's not worth the money then.
If I had infinite money, I probably would buy it.
Revv rented Blackbird Studios last summer, NAMM, which is one of like the big Nashville ones that everybody loves. And man, I don't play guitar any better in there. Like I love it and it sounds good, but if you don't have a good song, you're gonna be boned either way. And I think this is super cool. I love success, and I love that somebody out there built a bitchin' fucking home studio mansion. That's super cool. And yeah, like anybody with the money for it should buy that. But also, man, if you're dedicated, like which I'm not, like my mixing skills are D tier at best, but you can do everything in the box with like $1,000 worth of gear and release like a bitchin' demo. Everybody's proved that over the years, right? Whether it was all the bedroom gent guys like C2 and Pliny, or even the early Bulb stuff. So it would be fun to have that, but I think that's more of like I'm gonna buy a Tom Anderson instead of a Squier Strat because I got a good day job. It's like you make the music on both, but you don't need the super expensive one.
Well, this is the thing that me and Adam always say. I think exactly what you're saying there. It's about two things, well, three things. It's about the skill that you have to actually mix and record. It's about the people that you're recording with. So, like Adam said, I think last week, not necessarily. He was asked by someone we were watching, will studios ever die out? And his the short answer is, it doesn't really matter about the studio. It's the engineer that's the most important thing, and having someone that can record the music for you and focus just on that. Then thirdly, the gear that you have. And I think what me and Adam always looked at with the gear is, for $1,000 you can maybe get 70% of the way there to the best sound, and then as you spend more and more money, you get closer and closer to say the 100%. And I think we sort of feel our studio now is probably the 95-96% mark. And what that last 4% cost is probably about $5 million.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at.
the first time I ever tracked in a real studio, I was doing some session work in Orlando. I lived in Orlando for school, and the first time I was ever recording not at live or at like a home studio. And they were like, okay, you're going to cut this acoustic part. And I have my garbage acoustic guitar. I forget what I had at the time, probably like a Chinese Ovation. And they sit down and they sit me down and they put two U87s on me, like real ones. And I was like, oh shit, I don't want to, how am I going to move? I don't want to strum in front of this. Like, that's all definitely part of the equation. But some people forget it's about the music. I definitely do that all the time. I have more guitars than I need. I have fucking massive Glory pedal boards that are just for posting on Instagram, basically. And we could all plug straight into a $200 solid state amp and get with a $100 bullet Strat and still make music. You know, it's just not as fun.
Yeah, that's definitely the other side of it, is that the enjoyment of using the gear. Definitely, that is definitely a factor.
Absolutely. And last news article for the day. Lustrous Plates, the Steven Slate plugin, came out yesterday. I think it was yesterday. No, day before yesterday. And I say it came out, but it kind of didn't, because what happened was they released the iLok, as shown here, the licenses, all at the same time, to every member of the Slate Everything subscription.
Oh, no.
It crashed the servers. So nobody could use iLok for hours.
Yeah, where's my iLok? I got mine somewhere. Man, that sucks. I love I'm such a Steven fanboy. I love him because he helped engineer a lot of the Bendes stuff, like the Paramore albums, and both of them have gone on to do such cool stuff. And I love, for somebody like me, who I guess you could describe as entry level, I love the Slate bundle. It gives me everything. It helps me learn. I love his videos. I love his mixes. Seems like a cool dude. It sucks. That's the unspoken thing of running a business. You can plan everything perfectly, and some dumbass thing is absolutely going to go wrong, no matter what.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They actually, Steven Slate himself, after the whole thing, sent an email out to everybody saying, look guys, we're really sorry, didn't know that was going to happen, and basically at the end, stop whining, because god, the Slate audio files Facebook group, there were hundreds of people going, oh, it's not working, why can't I activate it, oh, it's not working. It's like, dude, breathe. It's a new plugin.
People are so critical of gear. That's a good example. I feel like there's a bunch of forum warriors that have like never played a show live, or never recorded anything, or don't know anything about tone, and literally anybody comes out with like a pedal or a plugin or anything, and there's a bunch of people that are just looking to chop people down because they see business owner, they see a business, and they picture some dude with a top hat and a monocle instead of somebody that probably works more hours for less money than like the manager of your McDonald's, you know? And so everybody's looking to cut each other down. Same with albums too. I hate people that want to mix crit every single album that comes out. Somebody told me that they couldn't enjoy the new Revocation album because there was too much 2K and the left overhead, and it literally hurt their ears. And I'm like, dude, like, absolutely fuck off. So, wow. Man, are you that bummed? Like, were you gonna make $1,500 on like the last 2 hours of working time that day that you needed a plate reverb for your mix? Like, give it a little while. Everybody's just trying their best, man. Yeah, I love Steve because he will tell people to fuck off. That YouTube video of a marching band walking past his demonstration at NAMM and him freaking out on him is amazing. I back anything he does.
I thought it was great. He's one of the most patient people I've ever seen, except for that one time, for anyone who's not seen it, NAMM being the big thing every year where you show off all your new products, and it's their announcement time. And so hundreds of people gathered round, press, everybody, microphones, cameras, and the NAMM marching band comes past. In the middle of the announcement, like the loudest thing you've ever heard, and Steven's trying to shout over it. And eventually,
have you guys attended NAMM before? Either of you guys?
No, we keep wanting to, but from where we are, it's a real pain.
The expenses are dumb. It's like not everybody should go to NAMM. I go to NAMM because I have to work like the entire time for my companies, so they pay for my flights and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's a pain to go from overseas, so I don't blame you. But for anybody that doesn't know, they have the noise police, people that walk around with decibel meters, and at a show for displaying musical instruments, if you go above a certain rating, they cut your power. Like it's like 2 warnings and then you're done. Like your show's over. So Steven, who for sure has been having to abide by don't go over 95 decibels or whatever it is at your booth, has a goddamn marching band in front of his booth. How are they not getting kicked out of the show? It's a double standard.
Yeah. Ridiculous. And they're employed, paid, however, from the NAMM show itself. Yeah, oh god, it's like having a little room full of hamsters and then just throwing in a cat.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody behave yourselves. Grenade! Yeah. Oh, good god. Yeah, that's thrown me off what I was going to say again. But yes, so last thing for today then. I will play for you guys a mix that I did this week, which is relevant because it's using the first example of lustrous plates that I have. On Tuesday, I was in the studio with a guy called Tom Gibson, a lovely young man. I'll put a link in our chat in Skype for Kyle and Liam to have a listen, because over Skype this is going to sound like crap.
Yeah, I realised that last week when Adam played something. I was like, Adam, your mixing's gone to shit, and then I realised Skype sounds crap.
Yeah, although luckily it's not metal, so it might not sound too bad this week.
Okay.
Right. But the song starts off, this kid, he's 17, so the vocals are the Slate VMS1 with this Slate preamp, and the Blackbird microphones, I think we settled on the Blackbird 67, and the opening guitar is just his Fender Blues Junior with one Sennheiser mic on it, and the ML1 was at the back of the room and I compressed it to hell. And then, of course, there's drums, there's acoustics, there's all sorts of stuff is going to come in, but it's that the intro is just, it's a classic pop intro, and it's just a great vocal and a great guitar. And this kid can really play as well. He starts with the Strat, later on he gets his 335 out. Let's play it. This is Tom Gibson with Not Right For You.
I can't tell you myself.
Yeah, are we supposed to just be listening with the Dropbox file?
Well, that's up to you.
In your life, I hope you find somebody.
I'll try to pull it up. Like I said, I'm doing this on my phone.
And he treats you right. Don't say the things we couldn't do. We both know that things just didn't work. We can't fuss up a fight. Our road stopped and took a turn.
I'm not gonna figure out how to listen
close
to it.
both my eyes, 'cause you were the only one I heard when the strings were untied. I don't know how much this is worth. If we said we might, it only makes it worse. It only makes it worse.
And that was Tom Gibson with Not Right For You. Now I've got to unmute Kyle. Sorry about that. I had to mute Kyle so that he was... there we go.
Oh, is it coming through?
Yeah, I think I've muted you remotely. It won't let me unmute it. Is there a button on your side, Kyle, to get sound back? The microphone you're looking for. There we go.
Now.
We're back.
Okay.
That
was good. I really like his melodies, like the vocal, like the guitar part is a guitar part that's been played like a lot of times, like it's a good tried and true thing, and I felt like he's saying interesting melodies over it, and the solo had like hella Richie Sambora vibes, which I like. Yeah,
he's a good kid. We recorded and mixed and mastered the whole thing in one studio day, so we really, including full drums, full everything, and we really cranked that thing out. His, like I was saying, his dad owns our local guitar shop, so he's been around guitars forever, and you can definitely kind of tell. But that solo was just his 335 with the tube screamer through a PV Windsor that I have, which is basically a Marshall Plexi. But that's through my new Zilla 4x12. There's kind of a vertical 412. It's kind of stacked. They're kind of in a diamond configuration, so it's tall. It just has that big sound. But yeah, I mean, arrangement-wise, I think it could go somewhere a little sooner. But that's something to work on, I guess, especially as a 17-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the studio for 30 seconds yesterday. Just popped in to say hello. And I went to the supermarket to buy some groceries, and that song was stuck in my head until you just played it. So now it's going to be stuck in my head again. So thank you. I just got it out.
The solo tone was awesome. A lot of people tend to overthink that thing, but and sure, maybe think about all the most revered solo tones, like late 70s of all time. Sure, maybe some of them were using doubles or whatever, but what was Larry Carlton? It was a semi-hollow with tons of mids basically into the desk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you took a 335 with a tube screamer. Sometimes you don't have to overthink it.
And that's exactly what it was. The whole amp, if I remember rightly, everything was just on 12, just nothing crazy. Gain at half, output, because this thing has a master volume, half. There was a 4x12 which had a SM57 on a redback Celestion. Ooh. And the ML1 was at the back of the room, again, compressed really kind of hard, so that was making the solo sit. Because, compressing room mics is a real big favourite thing of mine for anything that's more chilled out. Or even on heavy stuff, on drum room mics. But you've really got to be careful and to make sure that your EQ doesn't go like, oh, I've got all the mids.
Oh, yeah, it'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big problem with any compression, right? It's people, especially if they're not used to studio compression, they're using pedal compression, and maybe they don't have a blend or whatever. It's you lose so much high-end information with just straight ahead compressor if you don't know how to work it. And so a lot of people try and do the periphery thing. What was their hilarious P1 rig? It was 2 tube screamers, 2 decimators, a compressor into their amps, totally flattened out. But you need to have a blend knob, and you need to be able to dial it in at the right ratio, and that'll happen to your room too. All your cymbals will lose all the crack on top if you completely compress your room with no sidechain or no parallel or anything.
Oh, he said the swear word. He said sidechain.
Yeah, I meant parallel. I promise.
I'm kidding. It's just a mixed thing of mine is that I don't sidechain anything. It's a personal preference thing. I really don't like that pumping thing. For me, it should work. You should be able to EQ things and fit things in a space properly, and if you're having to make things pump, for the way that I see it, it's probably not right to begin with. Unless you're making French house music or whatever. But
hey, it's all valid, right? There's people like to complain about music, but I don't know. I've 100 albums a year that I absolutely love and think are some of the best ever come out every year, and they all sound different and were mixed different. If I like it, I like it. So hey, your stuff sounds good without sidechain, and I'm sure there's a bunch of good stuff out there with sidechain.
It's funny, I see lots of like junior engineers or Facebook kind of like, oh, I'm new at this, how do I use side chaining, and then you look at what the Grammy winners are doing and those kind of guys, and they all say don't use it, don't bother, everything fits in my mix already. It's funny, even guys who used to do stuff like that, like I don't know, Joey Sturgis for example, even now he says in interviews, yep, don't bother, because everything should sound right first.
Give it 5 years, everyone will be doing it.
Yeah, it'll be in fashion again. Like we were talking about before, we've come full circle. So
I definitely like your attitude, Kyle. I think you're completely right. If it works for you, it works for you. With anything when it comes to being creative, definitely.
I like good music, man. Like don't worry about, and unless like you can't hear the guitars going on. There's plenty of music I listen to where you can't hear the guitars though, and it sounds like it was recorded underwater, and it still works. You know, just it is what it is.
Yeah. Something for everyone. Okay, so let's cut the stream here. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thanks very much, Kyle, for appearing on the show today. And thanks, as always, Liam, for co-hosting. I'm Adam Steele, and this has been the Hopcast. Thank you everybody for watching. And before we go, consider Patreon. Thank you very much. See you later. Goodbye.
See you guys.